Um, I got a question from a viewer on a recent live video, but let me get everything set up here before we dive into it. Okay. All right. So I made a live video recently about cutting up cherry wood into 5/4 slabs, and right here on the bandsaw. And I got a comment on that video asking about the fence. So I've talked about the fence a little bit before in my live shop tour video. Again, description, or the link for that one is in the description as well. So if you want to check out the shop tour, check it out in the description. But I never really talked about how I made this, or, I did talk a little bit about why it has these holes in it. But yeah, let me just jump in and do a quick live here about how I made this. So it's not the greatest fence ever made, but there it is. I made it for this Craftsman 12-inch bandsaw, and there were a ton of these made in the 70s and early 80s. So wouldn't be surprised if you've seen them, if you have them, or if you are considering buying one. I got this one used probably close to a year ago, and it came with no fence, and as you can see here, and it doesn't really have great ways to connect anything, and it's not a huge table here either. And so, well, I guess I shouldn't pull on that part, right? I wanted to figure out a way to make a fence for this. So, watched videos and considered what I had to work with, and ended up coming up with this. So what I made this of is just some plywood that I got from a shipping container that I salvaged, right? So it's just somebody had an old shipping container that they weren't using anymore, and listed on Facebook Marketplace, I think. And so just went and grabbed that for free, because free is my favorite price. And I used it first for a circle cutting jig for the bandsaw. And so you might be able to note that on each of these holes, I've got a number indicated, and that was because I made holes for every inch, and that way I'd be able to cut on the bandsaw a circle of varying sizes. I decided after a while not to do that. Oh, got a call coming through from potential spam. I think I will ignore it. Oh, Heather B is in the chat. Good to see you, Heather. Yeah, usually I'm doing usually I'm doing my lives much later in the day, and Heather was bemoaning not being able to watch, but now she gets to join. So we're probably not going to go for very long here, because this isn't a super long story unless people have questions. Anyway, so I used this plywood originally for a circle cutting jig, and that's why I made these holes in it. I decided to make a different circle cutting jig, and so I no longer needed the plywood for that. Let me show you the new circle cutting jig. Okay, there it is. Not sure how well that's showing up on the camera, but I got a bunch of, again, for free, a bunch of old boards. And so this was an old shelf, right? And so it's got a melamine top. And so it's a much smoother surface than the plywood. And so I could have things glide much better. And then I made these things. Actually, let me clamp this down real quick so that it's not flying away on me here. Because this is a pretty big jig for the size of the bandsaw table that's trying to support it. So I made these little things here out of HDF, high density fiberboard. And basically I've got two pieces of HDF that I've glued together. And so I've got the smooth side on both sides and then glued the other part together. And then I've just got a little dowel that I've glued into the middle. So this one is for larger circles that I want to cut. And this one is for smaller circles. And so then I can just put the the dowel into the holes, into a hole, whatever size I want. Well, there we go. Whatever size I want the circle to be. And the one downside of this particular jig is that it will only cut circles at each inch, right? So if I wanted something that's 4 3/4 inches, it's not going to work, right? But I figure as infrequently as I need to cut out circles, this should do just fine. And because I've got the melamine top here, and essentially like a melamine with that HDF slick surface, it will slide around quite easily on the board. So that's why I switched from using the plywood to using this guy. Oh wow, let me catch up on the chats here. Yeah, hit the like. Thanks, Grumpy. Thanks for being here. Hey, Michael, good to see you. Dad's Workshop, good to see you, man. And yeah, viewership is good, going up. Yeah, appreciate it. And vertical lives are great. Yeah. Yep, hit the like button. Appreciate that. All right, so that's my circle cutting jig that made it so that I didn't need the plywood for the circle cutting jig. So that's why my plywood on the fence has holes cut in it, because it used to be part of something like this. So let me get this out of the way. I'm really into, for those of you that haven't figured it out yet, reusing, recycling stuff, because that makes it a lot less expensive for me. And as I mentioned earlier, my favorite price is free. So why pay for something when I already have something that'll do the job? So so I took the plywood that I had been using for the circle cutting jig and basically cut it, right? So you can see I've got holes here. So it was 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, right? So cut it, put part of it here, part of it there. Also cut this part out of the jig, the circle cutting jig. And so 21, 22, and then this one doesn't have any markings on it, probably because it was the other half of this guy. And so then I've just put those in to try to make sure that it's square. And then on the sides, I made kind of these little runner type deals that squeeze up against the sides of the table. So it's a bit of a tight fit, but that makes it so that when I slide it back and forth, it basically stays square to the table, or at least as square as anything I ever work with. So, so that's how it works there. And kind of give you a different angle here. And so then whatever distance I want to cut with that, I'll just measure the distance with my ruler, right? Set it to whatever I want it to be. Like when I was cutting that cherry wood, I set it to 1 1/4 inches. So I could be at 5/4. And then when I'm connecting the clamps to it, usually I'll clamp the runner to the inside lip of the table. But other times, depending on where it's situated, I can also just connect it there. Right there, it's not going to work because it's a little bit too far, and the table, the underside of the table isn't uniform. And so let me see if I can give you a shot of that. Let's see. I'll just take this out of the tripod here. And so you can kind of see the underside. It's got these ribs in here that give it more rigidity, but make it a little harder to clamp things how you might want to clamp them. So usually I'll just clamp on the runner instead. That makes it a little bit easier. As long as I'm not hitting the rib, then I can clamp it down pretty easily. So, just like that. Then I just try to make sure that after I've locked it in, that I didn't, move it too far from, where I'd measured it, and I'll just put clamps on both sides, and then just use the fence like that. So, not a particularly difficult build, and increases the functionality of my bandsaw. So let's see. All right. Yeah, appreciate your Dad's workshop in the chat. If you value this content for whatever reason, or relax or learn, support the efforts by giving me a like and a sub. Appreciate it. Yeah, so that's mostly what I wanted to talk about. Not a huge amount of content for this live, but just had a question on it, as I mentioned earlier, and as I mentioned in the description. So when I was milling up or cutting up that cherry wood, somebody asked about it. So I thought, hey, why not answer the question? And it's much easier to answer the question in a video than it is typing. So here we have it. If anyone has any other questions on any of my videos, just pop in the chat on a live video or put in a comment, and we'll see what we can do about answering your questions and teaching to the extent that I actually know what I'm talking about, or just satisfying whatever curiosity you might have. So let's see. That bandsaw crushes mine. A mansaw. It's really not that much of a bandsaw, to be honest. It's it's just a 12-inch, and like I was saying before, Craftsman sold a whole ton of these guys in the 70s and early 80s. And, I have this one because I got a really good deal on it, probably close to a year ago. And I've got some other videos about changing, putting a new blade on it, changing the urethane tires. So, if we open it up, you can see the insides that, I haven't vacuumed for a while. But, so there's the interior of the door there. And I'll just lean that over here on the Moxon vise. And so, I've got a prior video where I changed out the urethane tires. They were just rubber tires, that probably the tires that came with it, and switched it out for these urethane tires that are supposed to work a lot better and last a lot longer. I've changed out the blade several times. Right now I've got just a 1/8 inch blade, and that's the smallest blade that this bandsaw is rated to accept. The widest blade that it is rated to accept is a 1/2 inch blade, and I've got one of those too, that I hid away in the corner, so I'm not going to try to get it out right now. The first blade I got for this was actually a 1/4 inch blade, right? So I figured, hey, I'm cheap, and let me back up. Part of the reason why I got such a good deal on this bandsaw was because it did not have a blade, and it did not have the plate here for the insert. And let me take off the clamp so it'll let me move the fence. So on the bandsaw, there's a little insert here, near where the blade goes in or goes through, right? And so this was just open, when I bought it. Let me grab a little Allen wrench here right? So that was just open, and that's not particularly safe. So I figured, it might be a good idea to get a get the insert there. I've since thought, what, I could have just made one out of wood, but at the time, I wasn't really thinking about that as a possibility. And actually, between getting a new blade and getting the new table insert, those two combined cost more than I paid for the bandsaw. So it's kind of a big investment for those two. But I got a 1/4 inch blade initially because I was thinking, I only want one blade, and so what's going to be the best all-purpose blade, right? The minimum size blade is 1/8, the maximum size blade is 1/2, the middle of that is 1/4. Might as well go for that, right? Once I started using the 1/4 inch blade, it worked really well until I accidentally broke it. But I was thinking that after I started using it, it would be better to have a small blade for the curvy cuts, and then a wide blade, the 1/2 inch, for like resawing type applications. Now, resawing with this isn't the best, as you can see in those videos where I was cutting up cutting up the cherry wood into 5/4 slabs, because the motor on this, and I don't know if you see, the motor is in frame, but it's down there. The motor is only 1/2 horsepower, and so it's not particularly powerful. So I can't really get through really thick wood all that well. Plus, my resaw capacity, so how far up I can go. So I can raise this guide up to there, but only gives me about 6 inches of resaw capacity. And I think my fence here is set at 5 inches. So it gives me plenty of support up to close to my maximum resaw capacity. But I decided, anyway, it'd be better to have a 1/2 inch blade for that purpose, and then the 1/8 inch blade. And I don't know if you don't know if I showed you this before, but why I'm pointing right up here. We've got 1/2 inch is the maximum, 1/8 inch is the minimum size blade. You can also put a sandpaper band on this that's up to 1 inch thick, and so it has a setting for sanding. And what this is just the where you're supposed to tension the blade to, right? So up top is the blade tensioning knob right here, and it connects to this little guy here and to the spring here. And so the more I twist down on it, the more it moves that that lever to indicate how tight it's supposed to be. And so right now I just over tensioned it, and so now I'll just take it back down to the 1/8. Now there's apparently there are some like bandsaw tensioning measurement devices that I have not been willing to pay for, but there's probably a better way to do it than just using this little built-in system. But I figure that's probably, again, close enough for what I need to do. As my grandfather used to say, it's good enough for who it's for. So let's see. Let's see. In the chat, we've got the stand on casters is sweet. Yeah, the stand was actually came with the bandsaw. The casters, though, I switched because the casters that came with it. I've saved them just in case I need to use them for something else. The casters it came with were like this, and so that's maybe a 2-inch wheel, and just rolling around in the shop. Sometimes when I've got concrete slabs here, and so getting over the concrete slabs, these would struggle with that a little bit. And the other big thing that I didn't like about these, no brakes, right? So the casters that I replaced them with are a little bit bigger. So I think they're 3-inch, and they have brakes on them so that I can, have it in a stable position instead of just willy-nilly. Because you don't want to be pushing something through and have your bandsaw move around on you as you're trying to, push some piece of wood through. So, all right, let's see. Reposition the camera a little bit so that you guys are forced to see me if as I try to get through any other questions here. All right, Grumpy, it's like he's got a tiny Ryobi. Yeah, I've seen a bunch of those Ryobis. Before I bought this one, I actually had another. I think it was a small Craftsman. I think it was like a 9-inch Craftsman, but it was a 3-wheel Craftsman. So it has the wheel here, and then a wheel over here, and then a wheel here. And so what I learned is that those are pretty much garbage. And so I tried getting it to work a little bit, and I didn't try that hard, but after a while I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna move on. And I think part of that was that I might have already bought this one by the time I decided to move on from the other one. But yeah, so I had a small one, never was able to get it to a usable state, and then just resold it. I picked it up at a garage sale at a neighbor's house nearby for, I think it was $20, and then I think I sold it for $20. So it served as a learning opportunity for me, not a money-making opportunity. But this one's been pretty good for me so far. All right, let me get back to questions here. Small Woodlot says, nice, need to build the same thing for your Delta 10-inch bandsaw may incorporate a miter slot as well. And being that we both have tilting table rigid fence, should be fine. Yep. Let's see. Dad's Workshop says, Dad got me one of those, but it didn't fit my saw right. Yeah. And yours is a 10-inch. Anything over 10 is a huge price jump. Yes, unless you buy used, right? So there are very, very few things in this shop that I bought new. One of them is my miter saw. And I've got, I bought my, well, in the miter saw, I got a really good price on that. And my, several of my Makita cordless tools, like drill, impact driver, compact router, and jigsaw, I think. Bought those new on a special at the Home Depot, not sponsored. So, yeah, it's very, very few of what I use here I bought from a store. Most of it's used, including this guy. And so I paid when I told my wife I wanted a bandsaw, she talked to my son and went and got me one from Harbor Freight, and gave it to me for, I don't know, Father's Day or something. And I was like, you know what? I think I can get a better machine for a lot less by buying something used. And so I took it back and then ended up buying this guy. So, so don't feel like you have to buy new. You can still get some pretty good stuff used. And a lot of times it's a lot less expensive than, the new equipment that it might not be as nice. All right. Better for less curve, more detailed work. Yeah. The thinner, Dad's Workshop's talking about the blade. This smaller blade, this 1/8-inch blade, it's got a very narrow kerf, right? So I'm not going to lose very much material when I'm cutting with that. And then also because it's, so thin, I've got a lot of maneuverability so that I can do curvy cuts a lot better. Let me just pull out the 1/2-inch blade, even though I said I wouldn't. So since I tucked it away earlier, now on a 1/2-inch blade, I can still do a curvy cut, right? But my curves have to be a lot less curvy, right? So just so you can kind of see comparison for anyone who might not be aware of the difference between 1/8 inch and 1/2 inch. So there's kind of the difference between the two. So this guy is much better for just making straight cuts, whereas this guy is way better for making curvy cuts. This guy isn't going to do as well if I'm working with really thick material, whereas this guy would do better. But it's nice to have both options. So if I'm cutting something thin that has curves in it, obviously I'll just go with this one. If I want to cut something like I did with the cherry wood, using the fence, make it nice and straight, that blade's going to work a lot better. I was initially kind of put off by having to switch between the blades, and I've actually considered getting another bandsaw of this same vintage, just so that I can have one that's dedicated to the small blade and one that's dedicated to the resawing thicker blade. And like I said, you can get them cheap enough that that's not as crazy as it might sound, except this is a relatively small shop. Everything's on wheels, so it makes it a little easier to maneuver and get things done around here. But I was like, do I really want to take up the space with another bandsaw? It's not really performing a different function, so I can make do with this one. And so that's what I've done so far. So I came really close though. Recently, someone was getting rid of a bunch of different stuff. Actually, the same people from whom I bought the lathe, and they wanted a little bit more for the bandsaw than they wanted for the lathe, though. But their bandsaw, it's the same model basically, but instead of a 0.5 horsepower motor, it has a 1 1/8 horsepower motor. So I was like, ooh, I would like more power. But in the end, I think they've probably sold it by now, but so it's probably not available to me anymore. But yeah, kind of bouncing that around in my head a few different times. So, all right, let's see what else we got here. All right. All right. So, yeah, so Small Woodlot says that he got a bandsaw for a nice round figure. Anything above the $10.70 repair parts is a huge price jump. Yeah. Julio says hi. Hey, Julio. Grumpy's bandsaw only has 3.5 inches resaw. Yeah, and so for anyone who's not familiar, the resaw capacity is how thick of wood can you cut, right? So I was mentioning earlier, the resaw capacity on this is about 6 inches. His is only about 3.5 inches. And I've heard that people much prefer 6 inches to 3.5 inches, but don't quote me on that. All right. Amazingly clean on the inside of the bandsaw. Yeah, I mean, it's not that clean, but up high, it's pretty clean because, the dust comes down here, right? And so then the dust collection port is down here. So I'll hook the dust collection port up to my Centec hose. I think I've got affiliate links in the description if anyone wants any of this stuff. So I've got this little Centec hose connected to my, let's see if that's even in frame here. There we go. So I've got this Centec hose that is connected to a cyclone separator, a Dust Hopper Pro, and then, just a bucket. Got this one for free at Harbor Freight on one of their deals. And then that's connected to the shop vac. I've still got my hose connected to the jointer over here because of the live I did the other night. I was milling up the cherry wood that I had previously cut and then dried in the kiln, which is over here. So I've got a bunch more to work with. This is what I've milled up so far, this pile of cherry wood. This other stuff isn't as uniform, and so it's probably not going to work for my first project, which is making a shoe rack for my mom. But anyway, so I started that process on the, so I run into the bicycle hanging from the shelf here. So I just hooked up the dust collection to the port on the Porter cable jointer. And since it doesn't have a compatible hose, I just connected it with painter's tape because I have some and it's cheap and easy. So now I can take that off. And then the Centec hose, the Centec has a bunch of different adapters that you can use. So this will clip in to stuff, right? So like if I'm using my my sander, right? And actually, I bought this sander new too, so so I can just clip that into that port, and it's quick and easy dust collection, which I really like with the sander because that can mess you up if you don't have good dust collection on your sander. And then I've also got this little adapter, and I made it so this part, clips in right there, and then this guy fits right there. And it also fits various other things like, this little attachment that I believe came with the shop vac. So I can disconnect the port there, clip it in there, vacuum up my shop, and then drop it. And so anyway, I like this Centex system. It works pretty well. So let's see what other comments and questions I should address here. All right. Oh, right. Going back to how clean it is. So, the dust gets pulled down and then into the dust collection port there, but it does, pile up in places. So, but mostly on the bottom half, whereas up on the top half, it doesn't really have too much opportunity for collecting dust and dirt and everything. So, all right. Position that so you can see not only the bandsaw, but the lovely sign that my wife made for me for Christmas. Made a little video about that as well. All right. So let's see, what else are you guys talking about in the chat? Dad's workshop pushes the Resaw capabilities of his bandsaw to the limit. Yeah. Well, let's see. What is the capacity on yours? How thick of material are you able to resaw on yours? Because if it's similar to the 3.5 inches that Grumpy's got, then I can understand why you'd be pushing that to the limit. Michael is going to catch some lunch, and I can't say that I blame him. Lunch sounds delicious. And let's see, 2-wheel 9-inch. So Grumpy's 2-inch 9-inch. 2-wheel 9-inch Ryobi max Resaw 3.5. Yep. And Dad's not a big Harbor Freight fan at the moment. Any stories on that, Dad's workshop? I like them for what I use them for, but I don't buy everything from Harbor Freight, but they have some good deals on a fair amount of stuff. So okay, so Dad's workshop says waiting for them to call. Maybe they have a quality product somewhere in there. I haven't seen it yet. Yeah, I think there are quite a few things that they have there that are good enough, but I think you may have heard me say that a few times. But I'm not necessarily looking for the highest quality tool. I'm looking for the tool that will get the job done, generally for the least dollars out of my pocket. So Harbor Freight comes in on that metric pretty well in a lot of different cases, but not always. So, all right. And let's see, say slow S cuts maybe. I'm not sure what you're meaning there, Grumpy, but maybe you can give me a little bit more. Maybe I'm missing something from earlier in the chat. But anyway, those are main things that I wanted to mention. Mainly just the fence that was asked about in a previous comment, or a comment to a previous video. And so if you have any other questions, like I said, throw it in the chat or put it in a comment after the fact, and we'll see what we can do about answering it. And making sure you guys get the information that will satisfy your innermost cravings. So thanks everyone for joining me on the live today, and we'll see you next time.